Good afternoon, and welcome to Noonday Meditations and Contemplative Prayer Power Hour. My name is Martin Coward, and we're so glad you joined us today. We come together every day, we gather at noon to love and support each other through this pandemic. And I am so glad you joined us today, and I'm so excited to be introducing our guest, Kiki, today, and she will be sharing with us what it is she does to use spiritual principles to guide her through this pandemic. And I met Kiki and that's February. We were both attending what was that called? It was called
ElderPride.
ElderPride. That's what it was. I'm sorry.
Pride 2020.
It was the first ElderPride 2020, and
Yes.
she was one of the co-sponsors, co-founders of that. She and Jack Elliott, the Reverend Jack Elliott, and we became friends. And she had so much wonderful wisdom to share with me there. I thought, wow, I'd love to get her on here one day and let her share some of her wisdom with us today. So I'm gonna get quiet. I'm actually gonna mute my microphone for the few minutes, and I'm just gonna let Kiki speak a little bit about how she approaches spiritual principles as a way to guide her through life, particularly how it might be guiding her through this particular time in the world. Okay, Kiki, please take it from here. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Martin. As Martin described, we did meet pre-pandemic in February in Oakland, California, at the first ever gathering for ElderPride 2020. And just when I first met Martin, I knew we were connected. I knew that I would like him, and we connected. It was really phenomenal. And then the pandemic happened, and I was happy to be able to join Martin in this format, and I'm happy to be able to join him today and he asked me to do a little presentation and a little talk. And the funny thing is, Martin said, have you written anything about this? And I said, yes. And I said, I'll send you a link to what I wrote. And then he said that he would do, a little preview, a little promotion. And when I got the promotion, I thought, this is really great. Martin has written an intro, and this is really good, and I should read his intro. And then it turns out that what I got was something that I had written that I forgot that I had written. So I first just wanted to read you what I wrote and then continue to talk. So what I wrote that I forgot that I had written in January of this year, pre-pandemic, is the title was called Spiritual Engagement, and I wrote it for Thrive Global. And Thrive is Ariana Huffington's new venture, post Huffington Post. And this is what I wrote about, and it was actually this. Now that I'm recalling, this was actually an assignment from a course that I'm taking with Reverend Jack Elliott in ElderPride, a spiritual leadership collaborative. And the question was, what does spiritual engagement mean to you? And so that's what this piece is. Spiritual engagement to me is being present and connected with myself. I do daily meditation, writings, readings, and breathing to ground me. I start every day clean and clear. I practice the 4 agreements at all times. I am open to blessings on my spiritual journey, which includes solo time and time in fellowship with my family at Heart and Soul Center of Light, and in community with my guru, RJ, and classmates in the Spiritual Leadership Collaborative at ElderPride. A friend, Fresh White, Lev, shared with me that he starts each day with 4 questions, and so do I. 1, how can I serve? 2, how can I grow? 3, How can I be kinder to me for what brings me joy? And I recently, and this was in January, so this happened when we could gather together in December, participated in a 4-day workshop entitled Sankofa, Ancestral Healing and Kwanzaa Rite of Passage with Dr. Will Coleman. Classes and workshops also help me to be spiritually engaged. Every thought and word, spoken or written, is infused with love. And I ask myself if it is kind, true, and or necessary. Two other vital daily ingredients: love and forgiveness, of self first and then of others. My daily reads in book form and ebook, and one in audio too, include A Course in Miracles, 365 Days of Richer Living, A Year of Miracles, hashtag empowered 90 Days of Enlightenment, Encouragement, and Spiritual Inspiration, and Acts of Faith, the 25th anniversary edition. I also do the online course and app of the Creation Frequency. My Breathe app is on my Apple Watch. I do it for at least 1 minute daily, and it helps concentrate and reduce stress. Ashe. And that's what I wrote about my spiritual practices. And the only thing that I add is that I reread at least the one-liner of the 4 agreements every day as well.
That's beautiful.
That helps me. That helps ground me as well.
That's one of those. Those are all wonderful processes, and I am familiar with it. I mean, let's say hello to Darceau, who just piped in and said hello. One of the things that I ask people to do, because I don't have any way of knowing who's here, I just see numbers, and so I ask people if they would to just type into the chat saying your hello, so I can say hello back, and we can create more, maybe even more of a dialogue versus a monologue, and and so that gives that opportunity. So if anybody wants to ask questions, and please do, because that's the idea. Do you by any chance have the 4? Because people aren't, not everybody's familiar. Let me do 2 things. One, I want to summarize what I'm hearing in all that you do. But I want to summarize it. It is, there was only, we got one commandment. We didn't even get a suggestion from Jesus. We got a commandment. We said to love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And everything I heard you say was, I would say, following that commandment almost to the T. And that, because what he's talking about and what people get confused about, I think often, is the concept of what God, when he's talking about the Lord your God, they're using an old egoic construct of a person outside yourself. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about the divine within us. I call that divine the wise woman sometimes. You can call it God, you can call it Christ, you can call it the Buddha, you can call it the universe. A lot of names for her or for that presence. I think Eckhart Tolle calls it the presence of now. In hearing all that, is there something in particular in your practice? Maybe you want to pull a piece from the 4 agreements that we might could sort of chew on a little bit to give people who aren't familiar, because the 4 agreements is that it's about how to at the action you can take, how to engage in self-love, and so I'd just like to hear a little bit about how make that connection, if you will, between the 4 agreements, and if you got something you want to read, and then that commandment to love the God, the divine self, the true self, the authentic self.
Yeah, I think that's, that definitely resonates with me. And you mentioned Eckhart Tolle, and the other thing is that I read a lot of folks and follow a lot of folks, and that's also why it was great to meet you, and hear about your practices and Eckhart Tolle, and I'm always being introduced to other people as well. So yes, I think that for me the core really is combining what you said in terms of the biblical lessons with the practicality in terms of the spiritual work. Self-love, I find, is really key. I guess the two tenets I would say would hold it together: self-love, maybe three: self-love, love is all there is, and we are one. And
Yes.
this notion that there is no separation probably was the toughest thing, because that means if you think that we are one and all is love, that you can't then separate out and say, hey, everyone is love, all is love, except for Hitler, except for Donald Trump, except for my ex-wife. So that I think is really the key
Yeah.
for me. And it's like if it's all love and we are all one, that means we are all one. And you have to look for and see not only the divine and the divinity in yourself, but also others. And there are
Exactly.
there's absolutely no exceptions. And this, forgiveness notion, which is big, is also self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others
Absolutely.
as well.
And the idea of one, Eckhart Tolle was what helped me to ground all that into a way to take it beyond an intellectual exercise is human beings. And he says, many humans, one being.
I like that. I
So,
like that.
so the idea is that when we can never be separated from the creative force within us. We can never be separate, or we wouldn't be alive. That's our life spark. But the only thing that can separate, that's why I think it's always good to have practices, is our mind. The ego thinking mind wants to believe it's a separate entity. And that is fit for survival. And so the problem with that is we begin to believe that, and we create a false personification of ourselves, a false identity. And then we begin to get attached to that. And that has to have, by these practices, from my perspective, that has to have a sort of a ritual of dying every day. I have to go through my own practice to let that, to surrender that false self, or and you talk about having out with a clear mind, so that I'm operating throughout the day from the place of my authentic self. And I'm just going to say that sometimes, and right now, it's harder because there are days when I wake up and I'm just in so much this week, particularly with the pandemic and news of people that friends of mine who lost. I have a good friend who lost his mother and his sister last month, and it just breaks my heart. And what happens is, for me, is that I get angry. And I begin to blame, administrations. And I know that's not coming from love. That's coming from the human side of me. So I've got so the practice is to reconcile that through. For me, it's a pathway of surrendering. It's letting that go. But I have to sit in the discomfort of that separation in contemplative prayer in order for me to kind of get to the other side of that, and I guess pass through it. I can't just bypass. I can't spiritually bypass some of the feelings of despair and depression and fear and anger that will come up based on things that are happening out in the external world. And I think that that's particularly true right now when we want to blame and point our finger at others for. Now, it's not to say that and I want to hear a little bit about what you might have to say about that, and if there's anything in the Four Agreements in particular that you might could shed some light on that, because that sounds like that's sort of your core go-to for spiritual assessment or spiritual confirmation, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. And just to acknowledge what you said, it's not that I don't get sad. It's not that I don't get despondent, but I don't wallow in it, and I don't allow myself to be depressed, because I think that it is a conscious decision. And I do have anger, but my anger is limited. And I do have negative thoughts, but when I have those negative thoughts, I cancel. And I actually literally say, cancel, 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 uh, because it is a consciousness in terms of what I think, and it is a thoughtfulness. And you're right about the four agreements. And I just wanted to what I do is I don't even I just read the headlines of them. And so just to share with people who are not familiar, the headlines that I read, and then I'll go a little bit more into depth, is the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And I think that that's pretty self-explanatory, but that's simply all I read every day is be impeccable with your word for the first agreement. The second agreement, which is really, I think, key for me, is don't take anything personally. And I will elaborate on that one because I think that that has been key for me. I'll come back after I go through all four. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. Another key one, and I just have to digress on this one. It reminds me of an old, and probably many of you in our generation, and let us know in the chat if you remember this, on The Odd Couple. I remember there was an episode, and I think it was Felix who said, he was doing a courtroom scene, when you assume, you make, and he drew around it, an ass out of you and me. And so that was my lesson about not making assumptions. Don't make assumptions. And the fourth one is always do your best. And those are really, really the key ones. Be impeccable with your word is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. But the only thing that I would add is remember that your word is not only what is spoken, it is your thoughts, it is your consciousness. So, be very impeccable with this. What I told you I thought was a key for me is don't take anything personally. The short little nugget on this is that the second agreement provides readers with a way to deal with hurtful treatment from others that they may experience in life. It advocates the importance of having a strong sense of self and not needing to rely upon the opinion of others in order to be content and satisfied with their self-image. This agreement allows readers to understand the notion that each individual has a unique worldview that alters their own perceptions, and that the actions and beliefs of a person is a projection of their own personal reality. Ruiz, who is the author, believes that anger, jealousy, envy, and even sadness can lessen or dissipate once an individual stops taking things personally. And I think that's been key for me in my personal relationships and my relationship with my wife, my family, my son, my daughter, and just in the world. And actually, about this when I was working in the corporate sector, and that was key as well. Don't make assumptions. Yeah, I think that was really good, and always do your best is really key. And the drill down of this is that your best might change from day to day.
I think moment to moment.
Moment to moment.
I mean, it was the best. And let me just say hello to a couple people who, for some reason, people's comments aren't coming across the screen, but I want to say hello to Courtney Burrell, Lyndon Harris, Michael Kinsing, and Rohit, Ruella, who all are joining us today. And thank you for being here. And I'm looking at the screen on my Facebook, and so if you've got some, and then Courtney just said, yes, because the self, the ego, is an illusion. So when we stop identifying with it, how can we take things personally? Yes.
That's right, Courtney.
All about the identification, and that's a lot about Eckhart Tolle's conversation, is the identification with the ego, which is what we got called the identification with the false self. the persona. So if we're attached to that identification, which we do, that's the whole point of prayer for me, is to detach myself from that. That's what I mean by that. That's what that dying of false self daily is as a practice. But when I identify that is me, that's going to get offended, because it's a shadow. It's just it's not even a real thing. So it's just an illusion that I've created, and it's easy to. But from my internal perspective, if I'm stuck down in my lower levels of consciousness, if I'm in my sort of mental, physical realm of fear and doubt and scarcity and all these things that come up that create that identity, then that's the way I'm going to see the world that day. And I would say for me and I think you're saying the same thing, we'll just kind of share it in different perspectives, is that when we let go of that, and one of the tools we use is meditation and prayer, to surrender that, to let go of that identity, so that we can step into a higher level of consciousness, which I would call the spiritual realm, and where reality really is. That's where life is, and there's nothing that can be. There's nothing that can hurt that. It is unhurtable, if you will. It is the creative genius of the universe that is here. It is the divine self that is here to create. And the beauty of all of this to me is, and I love the four agreements. The beauty of this to me is that when we have a process, a practice, if you will, that can get us out of that egoic mindset, then we're free to begin to listen really carefully to the divine spirit within us to move forward. And let me see what Courtney is a dear friend of mine. She's
okay.
She's piping in.
Thank you, Courtney.
I don't know why these aren't showing up on the feed, but I'll read them. So Courtney says, so for me, it's about constantly reinforcing I am not Courtney. Eventually, you start coming up from the perspective as source, seeing through the eyes of Courtney instead of Courtney. I am the stage watching the play of life. I'll let you comment on that.
I like that, Courtney. That's really good. And I guess that's also the other thing that I like, other than reading and meditating and prayer. I like talking to people about this because I get different perspectives, and that analogy, Courtney, just really works for me, because, along with not taking things personally, if you realize that if I realize I'm not Kiki, you're not Courtney, and I am just watching in the stage of the play of life, then that just adds another thing, and also another layer to my, as you mentioned, Martin, my consciousness about it. Because as you're watching a play, you're able to analyze. You're not in judgment. You're not in fear about it, and it is very freeing, as Martin alluded to. So, Courtney, really, thank you for that. Where are you, Courtney?
Courtney she's in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Colorado Springs, yes. If anyone else has any suggestions of what they do in their practices, please do share, because that's what
we love to comment on some of those things.
Yeah, those are really, really key.
I'm going to take it even a little further. Once I get out of self-identification and get over the narcissistic idea that it is Martin's life.
Yeah.
It isn't Martin's life. Life is here living through Martin. It is life's life. It is the divine's life. Yes. I am the instrument of it. But if I'm stuck in my egoic thinking, if I think it's my life and things are doing things to me, then I can't really enjoy and participate fully in life, because I'm standing in my own way. I'm sabotaging myself.
And you're being the victim.
I'm becoming the victim, right? Yeah. And so when I get out of that space, I'm all of a sudden like, oh my God, I'm now, by surrendering my false self, I'm able to allow the physical manifestation of Martin to be the instrument and allow life to live through me and express itself and create. And therefore I can bring the talents and the gifts that God gave me into the world more fully. And that's a lot more exciting. That's a very exciting way to live. And that's what I mean by prosperity coaching, is when we can allow ourselves to not We're not trying to achieve abundance and prosperity. We are abundance and prosperity. And then we can begin to do what prosperity and abundance does. We create more wealth. Right. And we create more prosperity because we're creators. We are co-creators of the universe.
And the co-creation is really important. And to have that feeling, and, as you mentioned, in terms of abundance and prosperity, to have that feeling of it, even before your human mind can see it, to have that in consciousness and to write about it and to say that that's what you are, and then to recognize when it comes to manifestations.
Absolutely, absolutely, and what I, from my personal story, I was so caught up in for years what I would call basically it grows out of our consumer producer economic structures and customs here in the United States and around the world, quite frankly, that we somehow think we're going to consume our way into prosperity, and the truth is we need to contribute by adding value to the world, and that's how we create prosperity. That's how we create wealth, because we contribute from prosperity to create more prosperity and create more value. And that's the new earth, a new earth that Eckhart Tolle talks about all the time, is creating new economic structures, new social systems and structures that support that truth. The systems and the structures we have in place, call them laws, call them whatever we want to call those things, but they're growing up out of I would call the ashes of the old that were so painful, old toxic system that says you got to claw your way to the top to get your share because there's not enough for everybody. I mean,
right, and step on people the way, because there was a notion that there's not enough for everybody, and
right.
And getting out of that notion that abundance is abundance and there is enough for everyone, and my achievement of abundance and prosperity doesn't limit anyone else's, nor does theirs limit mine.
No, there's an infinite supply of that, you get a great opportunity to kind of explain, it's an easy term, how wealth is created, and by adding value. And let's just say, Kiki, that you have a bottle of water and I have $1, and I'm thirsty, and I see you with that bottle of water in your hand. I say, wow, that water looks good. And you got plenty of water. So, and you see that $1 in my hand, that looks pretty good. And from my perspective, the water is of more value than my $1. And from your perspective, my $1 is of more value than your water.
Right.
If we exchange, we have created more value in the universe, and we have created more wealth, and there is an infinite amount of that. And that's what we're talking about. There's an infinite amount of sharing of resources within ourselves to make our lives better and more, and share and give and create wealth. And that is, from my perspective, the underpinning, the core of this creation of new economic structures and systems that are going to benefit all people, not just a few.
Yes, and that's what it was. I mean, one of the things that Reverend Andrea Earl of Heart and Soul Center for Spiritual Living says is a world that works for everyone. So it is this notion that it can work for everyone. It's not just, oh, let me just get mine and maybe for my family, but works for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not just I don't have to go out and just claw my way to my top for myself, because I know that the creator of the universe, of which I am part of,
right,
created an enormous supply. Now, I think what we're going through right now is what I call the Divine Mother having her fierce slap to wake the human side of our beingness up, because we have not treated each other, and we have not loved each other each other. We've not loved our Lord our God, and we have certainly not treated our world with respect and love. And
we haven't loved ourselves.
We haven't loved ourselves.
There's a self-love too. So
I got something I want to post in real quick that came from court, and we'll try to put it in if I can.
Okay.
Let's see if I can post this. No, did that post up? Let me see here. Here we go.
Oh, yes. That's great. You are abundance. Abundance is all that is. Infinity is all that we have to do is release and surrender to the limitations of the mind. You just have to get out of the way to let the flow of source run through us. The ego is a limitation. And that's it. I mean, and that's what, limiting ourselves is why we are not free. So
Right.
once you realize that of this infinite abundance and this infinite source, and that we are one, and that there are no limitations, then it's freer and we have abundance. And I'm declaring it just as you are, Martin, right here, right now. And the consciousness is recognizing it when you see it in all sorts of opportunities. Just the fact that we are here today, here now, that we have internet, that we're able to talk, and you're 3,000 miles away, and other people are further away, and we have this, and not to say that there aren't obviously horrible losses of life and people getting sick with the pandemic, but there are also blessings, because but for sheltering in place and learning how to do things different, we wouldn't be having this conversation now and recognizing our prosperities and our abundances now.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yes, it is. I think that is the ultimate paradox, and is to sit in the pain of of. I'll even back it up. The loudest and the most dangerous voices in the world right now are coming from cruelty and fear and and scarcity, and they're loud, but they're not very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And the quietest and the most powerful are coming from empathy and compassion and truth and competency. And you can hear it so clearly in our leaders. And I mean, and I think this new earth is going to come out of a collaboration with corporate leaders, political leaders. When this is all over, the whole, it's not like we're going to throw out everything, because everything actually, the capitalistic system from the golden perspective is actually quite good if it's truly running on a free track. It's for everyone, and I think corporations which are run by people who are also waking up to the truth with us, and you're hearing it from people like big financial influencers like Tony Robbins and Ray Dalio. It's not just spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle, which we expect to hear it from, but it is financial influencers in the world, and that's what gives that, and that in itself. And we're joining them. So there's a movement, if you will, toward this higher level of consciousness and becoming the creative generation, if you will. We're not workers, we're creators.
Right.
And that's just a much more exciting and a more fun place for us to live our lives.
Let's see and that's the ultimate thing. You mentioned fun, and I think that's fun. You mentioned creation, and I couple that with joy. And
absolutely,
that's stuff that we really need to focus on a conscious level. And in what you posted, we also need to make sure that we clear the path, that we get out of our own way. Right. In terms of achieving this and receiving it and being open to it.
Yeah, because we as Ken Wilber says, we can't spiritually bypass the lower realms of consciousness, the fear and doubt and scarcity and entitlement, all those things that make us human. Right. And the path to enlightenment is to transcend those and include them.
Right. And that's the thing. And you mentioned, and obviously there is going to be pain. Oh. There is going to be sadness. There is going to be discomfort, to say the least. But there is also, as they say, simultaneously and at the same time, joy and freedom and we need to embrace that as well. We're not ignoring the things that exist, but we're also having an opening for the wondrous things that also coexist. And that, as you say, we are co-creating.
Yeah, it comes to, what comes to mind when you were talking then was, as we're coming up on 9/11, as you know from my telling you when I met you, is that I was part of the team that served at Ground Zero in St. Paul's Chapel for those 9 months following 9/11. And you mentioned joy, and I was going to say, people would ask me, how do you go down there, Martin, and be so close to all that horrible chaos and destruction and loss of life? And I said, there's something I got to tell you. Being in that space, as painful as that is, there is, when I'm in St. Paul's Chapel, when I'm in a space of holding space of love and healing, those people, particularly who were digging out body parts and cleaning things up, it was like being bathed in pure love, light energy, because it was such a healing place. People were sharing their pain. They were sharing when they would find the remains of a fireman, for example, intact. It was painful, but we would listen and share the stories. And in that sharing, there was, beneath all that was a level of tremendous joy. I don't know how it can sound a little strange, but that's what we come to, even in this pandemic, as we sit in the pain of, I think the joy is in the connection to others at that deeper level of consciousness.
I think you're absolutely right. And you mentioned 3 words that I think are key. And one of them you've mentioned several times, and that word was listen. And you talked about listening to the people at 9/11, and you've also talked about listening in your meditation and listening in your prayers. And I think that that's a key all the time for us to listen. And you mentioned connection. And that also is really, 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 I think, key. And there was a third one that I've forgotten one, but but the listening and the connection, I just really are key for us all. And I would just add, the joyfulness. And we're not trying to be Pollyannish and say, oh, the world is wonderful, nothing bad ever happened. But we're also not trying to be, Debbie Downer. Oh, it's horrible. Everything is horrible. Life is horrible. I'm horrible. Nothing ever good happens. Nothing ever works happens. The fact that nothing ever good works. The fact that we are here and breathing and alive is wonderful and is a miracle. And if you drill down, you don't have to drill that far to think of all the other miracles, that for me, that I woke up this morning, that my wife woke up this morning, that Martin woke up this morning, that my son woke up this morning, that my daughter might be awake in a little bit. I'm in California, so I'm 3 hours earlier than the East Coast. So, but just looking at the wonderful things, large and small.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we have shelter, that we do live in abundance, that, I go to Starbucks many days of the week. One of my, and also I guess something that I left out that is really important to me daily is affirmations. And now, as my minister, Reverend Andrea Earl says, use your smartphone for something smart, because they have affirmation apps on your phone. And one of the ones that I use is called the I Am affirmation app.
I love that.
It's so good. And then you can program how frequently you get these affirmations. So you can even get them hourly or even more frequently if you want. And then you can write your own affirmations.
I love that.
With the sentence there, I am.
I'm going to check that out myself. And we're coming up on the time where we need. I've had such a great time having it's so lively having this conversation with you, and I can just feel a higher level of vibration within myself from just our conversation, and that's why I'm so grateful that you could join us. But let's set the timer, and we're going to get still. We're going to get still, and we're going to let go of our egos and our false sense of self, and we're going to listen to that deeper wisdom within ourselves. Okay, so let's get started. One thing I like to do is ask you to raise your arms, because they're like, where is this life force? Well, That life force is what raised your arms. That's just how far the divine is from you. It is you. So just enjoy the joy of being able to raise your arms and feel that life force within your body. And then you can bring them down and just put your hands on your heart and breathe and just let go of any thoughts and opinions and beliefs and judgments you have about yourself, about me, about the world, about God. And begin to listen and feel your heart beating. Feel your heart beating. Don't think, feel it. And just notice as we begin to let go of thinking and move into our bodies through feeling. So we can listen to that deeper voice within ourselves to guide us and love us and show us the way to the light through this really difficult, challenging time in our history of mankind. But we're courageous and we're resilient, loving creatures. allow the interval bell to wake you up out of your trance so that you can reset and go back into meditation.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back on your journey. Let's see, we've got a few people who've made. I don't know what's wrong with my thing today. It's not allowing me to. My comments aren't coming through the StreamYard, but I'm going to post a few here. Let's see here. Kiki, what I want to ask you before we sign out is people might want to contact you. How's the best way for them to get in touch with you or find you in the world out there?
You can find me many places. You can find me on my website, which is kikipost.com.
Kikipost.com.
KIKIpost.com. You can also find me on another one of my passions, blackhistoryeveryday.com. And it's post plural, Martin, kikipost.com.
KikiPost.com.
Yes. And then if you want to email me, you can email me at kikipostplural@gmail.com.
Well, it has been kikipost@gmail.com.
Correct.
Okay. I'm trying to find out from StreamYard why these comments aren't coming through, but maybe because I don't typically have guests, but it surely was a joy having you on with me today. Kiki, thank you so much for participating with me and people share. I love hearing the perspective of a different perspective on the 4 agreements, because everybody's is using some form to stay connected with themselves and love and support themselves and each other through this pandemic. And so thank you so much for bringing your love and your wisdom to our gathering here today.
Thank you for asking, Martin, and thank you for your love and your wisdom and your sharing and your connection. And that's what it's really all about. I appreciate you and the work that you do, and I just appreciate you as a friend as well.
Well, I think that's just, the feeling is quite mutual, and I can just feel the love coming through the world right now from you, and I appreciate that so much. And so, will you come back again?
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's do that.
I thought of the other word that you mentioned frequently that is key: vibration.
Yeah, it is
vibration and energy is also key. But I will absolutely come back again. Thank you.
I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much, and may love and prosperity prevail. Much love.